Hey guys, Colin at lotusphotography.ca. We mentioned to you guys that we're going to be talking a little bit about camera settings. Big thing for beginners, amateurs is wanting to get off that auto setting. Most people are using when they first get the camera. So what the auto setting does is it uses, basically there's three different settings within your camera that let you control what the picture's going to look like when you take it. And so the auto controls all three of those. So when you can get all three under control by yourself, you can really control how your images come out. So you can really tailor these settings to exactly what you want to see, and then start making the pictures your style and what you want to see, as opposed to what the generic camera thinks you want to see. So what we're going to do is, they're pretty long topics in regards to the three different settings. So what we've decided to do is kind of break it down, and we'll do a video on each. So the three different settings, one is aperture, one is ISO, and the other is shutter speed. So on these videos, as I said before, we're going to keep it sort of simple. We're not going to go into a lot of different calculations and special words and stuff like that. But that's pretty much as advanced as it's going to get in regards to terminology. What we're going to talk about today, just to start off a little bit simpler, is ISO. What ISO does is, there's different ranges depending on what camera you have. If you were to flip through the settings in your camera, you'll see, it depends, Nikon and Canon, Sony, they have kind of different menu styles and that, but if you flip through them, you'll see something called ISO. And what that does is it increases or decreases the sensitivity your camera has to light. So what that means is, if you turn your ISO up to a really high number, some cameras, they can start their ISO at down as low as 100, and go right up to 6400, or some of them will just say high because it's a really high number. Basically what's going to happen is, if you put your ISO the lowest possible, say 100 for example, then your camera is it's not as sensitive to light. So what that means is, it needs more light into the camera to get all the information. But you're probably thinking to yourself, well, why wouldn't I just put the ISO as high as possible? Then that way you don't need to worry about the light, and I'll get, I can shoot in the dark. The reason why we want to shoot as low as possible the majority of the time, down as close to those 100, is because the lower that number, the more detail in the image. So the higher you put your ISO, say it's a little bit dark, and you think, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to put my ISO a little bit higher because it's dark, you'll start to lose a little bit of quality in the image. When I say quality, you get a little bit more grain in the image. Sometimes if you take a picture, it'll be nice and clear. Other times you'll see little bits of grains, or kind of looks like, when your television isn't a good signal and the kind of little bits everywhere. It looks a little bit like that. So the higher your ISO goes, say you go up to 2400, something like that, if your camera can do that, you'll be able to shoot in really, really low light conditions without having to use a flash, but you will get, there's more chance you will get that grain in there. So that's sort of the range of ISO, down from the 100 up to the highs. You want to try, if possible, to keep it lower, because then you retain a lot more quality than you do bumping up the ISO. That's not to say don't be afraid to move it up. A lot of photographers are afraid to put the ISO up higher, and when you're shooting in something that's low light and you don't really have control of the lighting, then you really do have to move the ISO to a higher level a lot of the times to get the shot you need. If you keep it down too low, your image is going to be too dark and it's going to be completely useless. So in my mind, it's better to have a picture that isn't the perfect quality that you wanted, but is still usable, as opposed to get something so dark that you can't even do anything with it. And if you do have to shoot in those high ISOs, say for example you like going to see bands or something like that, and you want to take a couple of pictures, obviously you have no control over the lighting, it's really dark in there, so bumping your ISO up high for something like that would be perfect. And also if you do get a lot of that grain and you don't like how that looks in pictures, a lot of the times converting that to a black and white picture will actually make it look a more it gives a lot more character when there's more grain in the picture when something's black and white like that. So it's always an option if you go too high with the ISO. But that's what happens with ISO. That gives you kind of a brief overview. So in your mind, you know you want your ISO to be as low as possible because you get the best quality possible. However, don't be afraid to move it up when you need to get more light into the camera. Okay? So we will move on to in the other videos talking about shutter speed and also about aperture. Those are the two main things. So we're going to do two separate videos on those, and then once we have done that, we'll do again sort of an overall on how to put that all together to start and get the images that you want. Okay, so again, this is Colin from lotusphotography.ca.